Well, thank you. It was really, really lovely food. They did a really brilliant job. Nice conversation as well. So, Bev is from the church that I'm the pastor of. Bev is a friend from that church and also a real encouragement in the church too. And in this bit of the evenings each night, we want to try to ground what we've said. What does it look like in somebody's life? So, what does it look like to believe that Jesus is really, really good, and what difference does it make in a person's life? And so I picked Bev, and partly why I picked Bev, we're dealing with a guy who everybody would say he's a rotten guy, okay? He's a criminal, maybe a murderer, so he definitely deserves to be ashamed in front of God. But I've asked Bev to do it, partly because, well, Bev's quite a good person. Like, people would look at Bev and think that they would think that she's one of the goodies, really. So I want to just explore that a little bit more, if that's okay. So, Bev, why might people, I'm not giving you, not that you would take an opportunity to boast, why would people think that you're one of the good people, I guess? Why do you think?
Yeah, I think maybe some people might think that I'm good because I'm a upstanding British citizen. I pay my taxes, I obey the laws, haven't murdered anyone, haven't robbed a bank. I might have stolen a pen at school sometime, and I've told a few white lies, but apart from that, it's people might see that I'm basically okay.
Yeah. So from the outside, definitely, when people, they always rank people, don't they? So, and I think on the doors for me as well, people think there's probably, like, as long as you're in the 50% or so of the good people, you'll probably be all right. Yeah. And if you're not, then you're going to be in trouble. And
actually, since when going to church, people think I'm good because I go to church as well.
Okay, yeah. So there's another reason for people to maybe. So if the world might think you're a good person, tell us maybe how you became a Christian, but then why you thought you needed to become a Christian maybe as well. So tell us a little bit about that story, please. Thank you.
Okay, so when I was, I grew up in a village in Norfolk, and I always thought that God existed and that Jesus was somewhere, but it didn't. I didn't really affect my life. It didn't. Why does that matter to me? And when I was 16, I changed schools to go to a different sixth form to do my A-levels, and I met a girl there called Lisa, who became really good friends with her, and noticed that there was something different about her. Couldn't really put my finger on it, but there was definitely something different about her. And over the weeks and the months that we were friends at school, it was obvious that she was a Christian, and she would say that she was a Christian. She would say she had a personal relationship with Jesus, which I knew that I didn't, even though I believed that God was around somewhere. And she would answer any questions that I had. She would encourage me to read the Bible a bit. And I actually became a Christian watching a film on TV. Yeah, okay. And I was watching the film Jesus of Nazareth with Robert Powell as Jesus. Some of you might remember that from back in the day. It's a bit of an epic, so it's about 8 hours long. So don't watch it unless you've got all that time. But I was watching just that it was the last episode, actually. And I always get really emotional in films. I can get quite into it and sort of forget about the real world and sort of go into that. But I did think that this was a true story. It got to the part when Jesus is brought before Pontius Pilate, who was a ruler at the time. And Pontius Pilate is saying to the crowd, "Who do you want me to free? Jesus, who I knew was innocent, and Barabbas, who was a murderer." And the crowd are going, "Barabbas, Barabbas, save Barabbas." And I'm sort of thinking, but no, what are you doing? He's going to go on the cross, and it's going to be your fault. He's not done anything wrong. And then I realised what I was saying, that I was actually saying, yeah, he hasn't done anything wrong, he is innocent. And I thought, actually, I really believe that. I really believe that that happened to Jesus, and that he was a real person, and that mattered. And then, I know it's a bit weird, but to talk about, but then I felt different inside of me. I felt different, sort of like a warm, fuzzy feeling. And a few months later, I had been reading my Bible from cover to cover, and I came across this phrase that Jesus cleanses us from our sin. And the word cleanse was exactly the word to describe how I felt at the time. And I lived in a village in Norfolk, and my friend Lisa had said, you should try and go to a church. So I went along to my local church, which was very small. It had about 10 people in it, and everybody was 40 or 50 years older than me. I was only 17 at the time. And they didn't really know what to do with me. But there was a couple there, an older couple who were in their late 70s, who really took me under their wing and befriended me, got to know me, cared for me spiritually as well. And they were the ones that said, when I knew I was going to London, they said, well, you should go to this particular church because they'll look after you, which they did. And it was at that church really that I realised that who Jesus was and why he came to die was the reason that I needed Jesus myself. So what he came to do was to, well, you've said this really already, but was to die on the cross for our shame, for our punishment. And although on the outside I didn't really look as if I had anything bad in me, I mean, that I joke about the sort of the pen that I stole at school, but that really came up, just something as simple as that. I realised that that meant that I fell short of God's standards and that I needed Jesus.
Yeah, no, it's real helpful. It just came to my mind there. I remember it was Liam preaching one time, but he was talking about if you break a window, maybe you only break the very edge of it. You need to replace the whole thing's broken. Yeah. It's just as if you've smashed the whole thing up. And it's interesting, isn't it? Like the thief on the cross, okay, definitely a guy that needs Jesus. But the people who look good, definitely people who need Jesus. We were sitting at our table as well. Like you don't even live up to your own expectations. Never mind the expectations or the standards of a holy God.
And I think when you realise who Jesus was and what he came to do, you realise that you're not actually good on the outside and on the inside, particularly on the inside, and that. I needed Jesus just as much as a murderer would.
Yeah. No, that's great. So just finally then, so partly you will want to be trying to help people to understand, whether they're Christians or not, to understand what difference does it actually make to kind of daily life? What difference does it make knowing that Jesus is good enough to your daily life? Is that a hard question?
It makes a difference because I now live for him, I guess. And I know that his goodness has been swapped for my badness, for want of a better word. And I want to live my life to please him because he's done so much for me. Because now I have a relationship with God and I'm accepted by God because of what Jesus has done for me.
Yeah. It does change you. It still as a church, like one of the things I try to do when I'm leading, and I don't lead every week, but every time I'm leading at Christchurch Riverside, we try to start more or less with the same theme that says, you're not here because you're good people. You're here because you need what Jesus has for you. And that's just, I think that's brilliant. Whether you've been a Christian for 50 years or whether you are exploring it and trying to decide, there's something wonderful. Jesus meets our needs. And that's why this matters this week. And that's why very appreciative of what you've shared there. If you want to talk to Bev anymore, please do. There's probably a number of people who have a story similar to Bev that you can ask as well. But also what you can do after this, I know Liam's talking about books, you can just come back again tomorrow night. Keep coming this week because we're going to keep building, and hopefully by the end of the week we'll have a really, really good understanding of the work of Jesus as well as who he really is. So thank you. Shall we give Bev a round of applause for that? Thanks very much. I'll pass over to you, Liam. Thanks very much.